Hey guys, welcome back. We are in the Queen of Pentacles season in the YouTube membership, and this video or audio will be released on my podcast and publicly, but those of you in the membership will be hearing this first. And I am excited to dive in because we are going deep into shadow contracts. Now, of course, I know a lot of you who've been around for a while are very familiar with shadow contracts. I've talked about shadow contracts quite a bit. But I'm talking today about a new level that I have never fully tapped into. It's been there. It's been around everything I've been talking about, everything I've been teaching, everything Spirit's been teaching me. But it's the bridge that I never have been able to quite articulate. So I wanted to talk about the psychic captivity of empaths, aka humans. Now, I've said before, and I will stand by this, that one of the signature characteristics of a human being is the ability to feel others, to feel another as they are you and you as if they are them. And this is a technology that is unique to our humanity because our humanity is relational. We are relational to our core. And we have been operating under the mechanisms of psychic captivity, and empaths are waking up to it. That's what we've been doing, especially the last decade. There's been a huge wave of empaths, humans, becoming sovereign, or at least beginning that sovereignty journey where they're getting free from lack. So this is really the missing bridge between spiritual sovereignty, political and religious polarization that's going on the globe, cult psychology and cult tactics, which are very much relevant to what's happening around the globe. I've said this a lot, and it's important that we understand this. Our nervous system getting hijacked. And of course, for us here in the membership, the Queen of Pentacles and her embodiment of this initiation of sovereignty. And remember, she, the Queen of Pentacles, represents the psyche of the body, the embodiment of our psyche. So I wanted to talk about how we have got enslaved, this collective psychic enslavement, which is a form of trauma bonding. I believe in our trauma bonding in humanity as it got enslaved mentally, we are naturally relational, so our bonds became trauma bonds. And so our psychic grid found a way for us to still connect, but to allow this other system to govern us. And we've been under the government of that system ever since. And this psychic captivity, which I love that way of putting it because it is psychic first and foremost. It's a psychological program that causes us to mistrust our creative selves, our creative energy, our creator. The aspect of us that it's creative. We are creators. That's what makes us human. And our ability to relate is part of how our creation works, our creativity works. This is not just in things that we create together, systems, worlds, the world we live in, but also how we procreate is through relationship. And this is the thing I keep saying we have been at war with, or this program, this captivity has been at war with. It's to keep us from understanding our creative nature, and in fact, making us at war with it. So all of the energy of our creative nature gets harvested to serve and fuel the lack matrix. And remember, the lack matrix is built on this core lie that there's not enough. We don't have enough resources. There's not enough resources. There's not enough for everybody. That's the core lie. And that we are not enough. We're not worthy in and of ourselves. And so we've created this system to decide who's worthy and who's not. And this system, ironically, perpetuates our mistrust in our humanity because it disconnects us from our creative nature. And this is why, without being connected and grounded in the body in sovereignty, our creative abilities can actually be detrimental to us because they're based on relationship. So that's why the alchemy that's taking place right now and the revolution on this planet is not another war. It's communion. And remember, the Spirit keeps emphasizing this, communion cannot happen without sovereignty. Sovereignty comes first. So the lack matrix believes that there's not enough, we're not safe because there's not enough. When we can't trust each other, we can't trust our humanity, we can't trust ourselves or others. And so we have this idea that humanity is dangerous and must be controlled or governed. And that is where we have given psychic permission for this foreign entity, this foreign psychic entity to take over. A lot of people have described it like a hive mind. You could think of this is just one way to put it. You don't even have to take this literally. But it's the entire planet that has been enslaved in this psychic grid. And so you could look at it like a hive mind species, another intelligence or system harvesting the energy of humanity, using humanity's magic, because part of what we are is magic. The fact that we create what we believe and that we're creators, period. That energy is getting harvested and recycled to fuel a system that only exists because of the belief that there's not enough. So if we start understanding that we are infinite and eternal, and that there's an infinite amount of possibilities here, then we weaken that entire system. And when the system gets weakened like that, it becomes desperate. And the more desperate the system becomes, because so many people are waking up and getting sovereign, or at least questioning and retracting some of their energy from these polarity systems, from religion, from politics, from all of it. So many people are doing that, so the system's becoming desperate. And it's important to remember that the system uses cult tactics to reinforce our obedience. And these are programs that have been on this planet for thousands of years. And there's ultimately a war between these external forces. And of course, all external forces are perpetuated through belief. So it is an ideological war. It's always about theology, ultimately. It's always about what we believe. But there's these very specific types of powers that have been on this planet that are at war with each other. So it looks like religious war. It looks like political war. It's ideological warfare. And we think that we have to agree ideologically in order to be safe because we're disconnected from communion and sovereignty. So we forgot that actually safety is in resonance, not in belief. It's in what we are emanating from our central nervous system through how calm we are. And we know that on a literal level, emotions are contagious. States of being are contagious. This is way more spiritual than people realize. This is not just who has the right idea and who's the best at implementing it. That's the lie of politics. So this lie disconnects us from our creative nature, of course, and that includes our ability to create solutions and thrive. So that's why we just keep giving our power to the same system over and over and over and going to war. And then, okay, now these guys, now this ideology or this belief system or this religion or this political affiliation is the one I give my allegiance to. It's a disconnection from our own creative abilities. And remember, we are a relational species and we need each other. And that our trust and our communion first happens within ourselves with our own creative ability. And the more we trust our own instincts, our own intuition, our own creative abilities, the more we trust each other. And the more we come together and create things in trust rather than things in mistrust, hence the lack matrix that governs us. We've given this artificial intelligence, so to speak, this psychic grid, the ability to control us, the ability to, it's really dominion over us. And that has interfered with our communion, which interferes with heaven on earth, because heaven on earth is created through communion, which is created through sovereignty. So it's important that we remember this and we see the bigger picture of how this works, because when we don't trust each other and we don't have communion, we have hierarchy instead. We have performative, merit-based systems that reward obedience to the external system rather than alignment with our creative urge. And it is the alignment with our creative urge that actually keeps us safe. The creative urge that comes from source, that comes from what we are, that is getting fed from source directly. So because our our technology as humans is relational, we co-regulate with each other and we co-create. We co-sense. We share meaning and stories and energy, and we build reality through our resonance with each other. So if we take a pulse check on humanity right now, on the psychic grid of humanity, we have been in fear of ourselves and each other, ultimately in fear of our humanity, in fear of what we are. And the only way we can overcome this is through rebuilding our relationship with our creative source. So relationship is the engine of heaven on earth. It is the foundation of heaven on earth. What type, or just whatever experience we have on earth, what our relationships look like and what the dynamics of those relationships are. And so when we look collectively at humanity's relationship with power, we see the hierarchy, we see where we are out of alignment. And remember, we mistrust our humanity, and so we have unconsciously and in many ways very consciously handed our power over to external systems. And we do this because we think we're protecting ourselves, because we don't trust ourselves. We don't trust our humanity. We don't trust our creative abilities. We don't trust what we are. We've been at war with that. And the lack matrix exists because of that mistrust and can only exist because of that mistrust. So of course, its job, based on its ability, because we created it, is to reinforce that over and over so it maintains power. And I really think this fear around artificial intelligence is a fear it's something we've already manifested. It's already happened. That is what the lack matrix is. It's an incredibly intelligent system. It's alive, it's spiritual, and it governs us. It has dominion over this planet, or it has had. This is actually where the balance is shifting, and it's not happening through political revolution. That is the lie. That is a total lie. Yes, there is revolution happening. Yes, people are waking up. Yes, things are changing. But it's not us going, this group is the right one and this group is the wrong one. That's not actually the revolution. It starts within us. It's in releasing our allegiance to external authority. And that is terrifying for the powers that were. So that's why they're getting desperate. And that's why we're seeing so much upheaval and polarity. And for some people, it reinforces their belief that they're not safe. And so they double down on the lack matrix. And so in many ways, certain principalities do get stronger because, remember, beliefs are fueled through emotion. And so when the lack matrix needs to make a harvest of energy because it's weak, it has to instigate a tremendous amount of fear and emotion. It has to stir up emotion that reinforces we have to give our power to these external things because that's the only way we're going to be safe. Again, not trusting our own creative nature, not trusting our humanity. But we're not being asked to trust the other. You're not being asked to trust your neighbor, actually. You're being asked to trust your humanity and to get to know your humanity, to understand how your human technology works, and therefore you will understand your neighbor. And you won't have to fear your neighbor. So we know this on a bigger level, but the places that are weak are desperate, and so desperate measures are being used, and it will inevitably trigger your deepest fears. And it's different for everybody what those triggers are. So the moment that psychic captivity began is when we forgot who we truly are, when we forgot that we are sourced through God, through an internal power, it is source itself. I think capital S source is the best description of what we are and what we've came from, and it's the womb. So we have outsourced our trust and authority and safety and even creative abilities to these external principalities, this dominion that's been on the planet. And instead of responding to reality through our creative urge, we've responded via our fears. And therefore, we've given power for these systems. Our creative genius has gone dormant collectively. It's been unleashed for thousands of years, but it keeps getting bottled back up. The jinn keeps getting enslaved. the Gen being our creative genius. And I believe that this next level of awakening and this work that we're doing with the Queen of Pentacles, really dissolving our shadow contracts with the lack matrix, breaks the dominion curse, which is the root of our captivity. So the dominion curse really is the belief that power is outside of us and that we must appease that external power in order to have power, or in order to have safety, or in order to have our needs met. It's this idea that we must obey in order to be worthy. We must be good in order to receive. Now, there is a wisdom to obedience to natural laws. Things like not killing another person, not harming others, not doing intentional harm, not lying, not stealing. That type, like those basic core things for a human society to function, I believe are essential. Like our obedience to them is essential. However, it is only through the day-to-day, moment-to-moment relationship with Source itself, the womb itself, the where we come from, our creative nature. It is only through that personal relationship that safety can be developed through our moment-to-moment choices. And that is what creates the resonance of heaven on earth. It is a relationship of trust with our creative abilities. Because if we keep power outside of us, there is not true ultimate trust. It's just simply master-servant. And the hierarchy of what do I have to do to be enough so that I can receive? And then we have to wait for the external world to tell us what we should believe, what's the right thing. We have to wait for the experts. We have to wait for the external world to tell us, which means we're always behind. We will always be behind. And that's why we feel eternally indebted, because we're always behind in that model. We don't trust ourselves. So the lack matrix really turns our intuition and our instincts into danger. We believe they're danger. It turns wealth into corruption. It turns self-trust into threat. It keeps empaths poor. It keeps us cautious, apologetic, obedient, all the things. And it's so subtle that the truth of the liberation is in between. Because often when we're getting free, we swing from one thing to another. And it helps us understand more, and it helps us, if we get the lesson, to ground into the wisdom of discernment, and again, the wisdom of an alive relationship with Source, being alive, being awake, being present to the body, being present to our instincts and our intuition and our senses, being in the body. That's what we are reestablishing as we break out of this captivity and we break this dominion curse. So it's important to remember the cult psychology of the lack matrix, because this is how humanity keeps saying enslaved. And to me, it's no clearer than in politics. How many people in the world still fall for the bullshit that it's us against them? There are so many people still in that, and really because there's deep trauma and horrific things going on, and the lack matrix uses that to reinforce this idea that we can't trust each other, when the actual reality is humanity needs trust in each other and ourselves. It's the only way out, not more war, not more division. And the collective world still gets lost in the story of the victim, aggressor, savior paradigm. That's why any agenda that continues to center the victim, aggressor, savior paradigm as its justification for whatever it's doing, it's the first way we can understand, oh, that's part of the lack matrix and that's part of the past. And I understand why we've done that, but we are transcending that belief that there's not enough. So it changes the way that we approach these things. Now, captivity, our psychic captivity in the lack matrix, has turned emotions like fear immediately into into mechanisms of control, guilt into mechanisms of obedience, shame into mechanisms of silence, and public punishment into mechanisms of compliance. These are cult tactics. This is how government functions. The biggest lie ever is that the government is not a cult. All government, global government, it's a cult. It's the governing of the lack matrix. And we continue to give our obedience to it because of these things, because of the way that the lack matrix has weaponized these basic human emotions to ensure control, obedience, silence, and compliance. And it's through phrases like, you'll be on the right side of history, which is moral manipulation. If you don't align with this, if you don't agree with this, if you don't post this, if you don't say this, if you don't vote for this side, if you don't whatever, it's that public, we'll make a public example of you. This is what doxing and all the cancellation culture, which not saying there's a place for everything and we're learning from this, but it ultimately has nothing to do with sovereignty. It's actually feeding the war. It's feeding this idea that we have to control the external or be in compliance or obedience to the external in order for us to be safe internally. It takes the power away from us and it reinforces this dominion curse. So it's important that we understand how these tactics work because it rewards us, the lack matrix rewards us for self-abandonment. It rewards us for isolation because then it's a threat to sovereignty. So it rewards us for the things that keep us enslaved. And these are abusive dynamics. These are cult tactics disguised as virtue. This is the wolf in sheep's clothing. This is the wolves in sheep clothing, which is why when the whole morality manipulation is being used, like if you're a good person, you would do this. If you cared about this, how dare you vote for this thing or this thing because this makes you a horrible person. It's completely manipulative because the system itself thrives on lack. It has no interest and no motivation to actually meet our needs because it would make the system obsolete. We have to understand that. So once we recognize that they're abusive tactics, we have to understand that all systems use it, especially when there's a threat to its existence. That the idea of any system that has power that we give our allegiance to and our obedience to, any of them, and all of them will eventually fall for us individually. We don't have to wait for them to fall for the world, for everybody. They just have to fall for us. We just no longer give our alliance to them. And eventually they just have no power over us anymore. So what's powerful about working with the Queen of Pentacles in this, and if you're in the membership, you know this, we've talked a lot about the sovereignty in our bodies, that her first initiation is full acceptance of our incarnation, of the body. And part of that is full acceptance of the light and the dark, the whole story, the grid that this was all built upon, which is the idea that there's not enough. And what the Queen of Pentacles does as an archetype when we begin working with this idea that we have sovereignty in our body, and remember the physical vessel is the pentacle, it's our first inheritance. When we begin to invest in that pentacle, we begin to invest in embodiment, embodying the beliefs that sustain us and serve our future. And that's where we change our mind. We have to change our mind first and have to understand that the belief that there's not enough will make us extinct and that beliefs create reality, which we already know. So we have to realize, okay, I have believed in lack for so long and I've been programmed to and I've been imprinted with it, but I also know that it's not true. So I'm going to be stepping out in actions that support the belief that there is enough, that I'm enough. And the first place to recognize that is in our breath and in mindfulness. That's why going to that Zen spot, going to the place where we know all things exist and all things are possible, just pure light, just dissolving into pure light, into pure oneness with creation itself, with the creator itself. When we dissolve into that place, we are ultimately doing somatic work. We're resetting the central nervous system. We're healing the central nervous system. We're grounding our intuition. We're embodying wealth because wealth is there's enough. And it's a resonance is all. We allow the resonance. We have to allow the resonance to exist within us in order for it to exist in the external. We have to embody that wealth of heaven on earth. And then we have to create rituals, because everything in this world is ritual reinforces. School, work, systems, our calendar, all of it's ritual. And ritual keeps the spell intact. And that's why anomaly, so much of the anomaly many of us have been creating, intentionally and unintentionally, is getting out of the 9 to 5, getting out of the rituals of systems, of just kind of disconnecting from the systems. That's how we break the spell. And we're allowed to, and we can. And notice how much fear comes up when we do that. So we start teaching ourselves that there's safety in receiving instead of it being wounded. Because we've been wounded in our receiving, because we got plugged into by this hive mind belief that there's not enough. So there's safety in receiving, and especially when we're receiving the belief that there is enough. There's safety in having devotion in the body, devotion to the body, devotion to the physical, which, remember, we're taught that's bad in the lack matrix, especially through religion. We embody this wealth when we activate practical magic in our everyday lives. Prayer, focus, intent, directing emotion intentionally towards a specific purpose. These are all part of our creative abilities that are God-given, that cannot be taken away. We can only give up our free will, but we have it regardless, and we can do with it whatever we want, and we will live the consequences of what we do with it. But we have to understand that basic fundamental truth before we start getting guilted into who we need to follow in order for us to have a will in the first place. No, that's not how it works. We already have a will, and our will be done, and we'll learn from that. So what do we want to do with that will? Because, as I always say, even if you want God's will, you have to say that, you have to give permission, because there is free will, period. That is just innate on this planet. So your creative sovereignty exists in the physical plane, and your body is the throne of that creative dominion. And no one can psychically rule a person who inhabits their own body. When we inhabit our body fully in the incarnation, no one can psychically rule us. So this is where we are creating anomaly in our resonance specifically. And I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the signs that we can tell easily that our creative urge, our magic, our humanity has been bound, is in psychic captivity. Now remember this, we were born into this, but I believe we get free, and we've been getting free, and there's many aspects of us that are free. But those core things that are rooted in the solar plexus often are the most ingrained, because they got there through trauma. So they have permission, so to speak, to be there through our beliefs that we created in trauma. So here are some of the signs that your magic has been bound, or it's currently bound. And if any of this resonates with you, which I know all of us at some point has felt these things, but especially right now, because in 2020 there was a powerful how do I want to say this? The word that's coming through is reenactment, which is an interesting way to say it. Reenactment of the curse. And so it reactivated a lot of these trauma grids where there's been deep, unseen, by the way, because the story hasn't been fully told, trauma on this planet. And remember, silence is part of compliance, which is why as soon as the lack matrix starts fearing that it's losing power, it will begin to make public examples of people that will silence people. This is why there's this huge thing about free speech, and it goes beyond anything, any political talking point. It is about having the right to speak how we feel, because we are naturally feeling relating, talkative beings. It's important. We must talk. We must share. We must say things, even if they're not right, even if they don't come out as we maybe intend or mean or even know. It's part of how our creative mechanisms works. We have to express. Otherwise, the energy gets stuck in the body and it makes us sick and it can implode on us. Or we externalize and project it and we go to war. So either way, it implodes. It's an extinction program. So it's important to know and be able to recognize where our creative urge is currently bound and free it, liberate it. This is the ultimate releasing your gen. So if you are feeling blocked or frozen creatively, if your magic has just felt like you're just not being able to create, you just don't feel like you want to create, and everybody's creative. So this is just obviously one of the most noticeable things is when we feel like we just don't have any desire to create. And this can manifest as a lot of scrolling, a lot of watching TV, a lot of just escaping into anything other than what we truly feel inside, and anything especially that disconnects us from how we feel. There's also the fear of visibility, the fear of being seen, or the fear of receiving. And this comes from the trauma of receiving things that are incredibly painful, ultimately receiving the curse. Also being seen, because as soon as we're visible, we become a target in the lack matrix. So the fear of being seen. And this is big for a lot of people right before they are meant to overcome something huge. It doesn't even necessarily mean you're going to be seen in a like social media way or that kind, like the way that we often assume. It just means people seeing your magic, people seeing your power, people being drawn to you, people being magnetized to you. And every day it could be you're walking in the grocery store and you know when your power's turned on and when your creative urge is on because people are drawn to you. And for empaths, a lot of times that creates a conflict because of our lack of boundaries. And so it's easier to have it turned off than to have to constantly manifest people and things that feel like they drain our life force because we don't have boundaries. And so often this is a psychological way that we turn off our creative energy. And it can make us feel safe in some aspects, but it also blocks us from being seen by the opportunities that are meant to be seen, that we're meant to be noticed for, if that makes sense. It's an invisibility spell. And so sometimes it's created within and other times it's created from externally through trauma or through other people making us invisible. Another sign that our magic is bound is when we collapse under shame or judgment. And this is from what other people project on us. That collapse, that inner collapse, and that feeling of like, oh, I don't want to disagree with anyone or I even share what I feel or think or anything because other people shame us for it. This is something we cannot escape. And social media is our greatest teacher with this. No matter how benevolent you are, how great you are, how much you've read, how much you've studied, you could do everything under the sun to make sure you are making the right choice. And there will still be people that hate you. And you could still even be making the wrong choice. And there will inevitably be things that other people don't like or perceive as wrong or bad. Because everybody is operating from their limited beliefs and they read everything through the lens of that belief. So it doesn't even matter what your intentions are ultimately, even though intention does matter for your own sake and for what you're manifesting. But when it comes to others, you have zero control over what people think of you. Zero. And this is a big one, I feel like, for a lot of intuitives and empaths who have gifts to offer the world, and especially if you've been raised in a religious or even maybe a really secular scientific type of background. And there's a shame in this because this has been painted as like woo, or that you're stupid if you believe this, or you're crazy or insane if you make it about, if you go down this, because it's connected to creative chaos, humans' creativity, which is connected. The energy of chaos is a part of our nature. And creativity, anything in the creative realm can cause chaos, which other people fear. because chaos can be disorienting in every way. But my entire point here is that it's inevitable. We cannot escape polarity in this world. And we cannot escape that for some people, because the world tells the story through the lens of the victim, aggressor, savior. So you will always be the aggressor to some people. And to other people, you will be the savior. And to other people, you will be the victim. So we have to just acknowledge that that's the way that our humanity tells stories, and our roles change all the time. And it's more powerful to ride the role you're in. When you realize to someone you're a villain, fully be that villain. Because otherwise you're not living up to your calling and your destiny. And I'm not saying do maleficent things to people. That's not what I mean. I just mean own that that's what they're projecting, that's their projection. And they have a right to believe that. It's just a permission of their creative will, yes. But it doesn't mean it's your story. And that's why when we get here, we don't have to fight other people. We don't have to try to control the external in order to feel safe. There is an incredible amount. It goes beyond tolerance. It's not even about tolerance. It's about the acceptance of light and dark on this planet, and that everything that you hate and despise and think is despicable, it exists. And there's people that are choosing it, and vice versa. And there's everything that you love and that you think is the best and the most worthy, it exists, and you can choose it. Everyone has creative will. So, but remember, we are relational, and heaven on earth is only created through our communion. And we've been at war. We've been in a psychic warfare. So, but communion is only ushered in through sovereignty. So part of allowing other people to have a creative will and owning your creative will is an initiation into sovereignty. So when we collapse under shame or judgment, that's a powerful way to know, like, we are still operating and we have to be good. And that's why morality and religion can trap us for so long. It can trap our creative power for so long, and we never actually become one with God because we stay in the victim, aggressor, savior. We stay in the idea of there's something higher and that we have to give our power to it and bow down to it. And that's true. The creative power is the source of all things. And ultimately thy will be done. So there is a point at which we do bow to the will that is being enacted. This is very deep, and it hits super historical, theological warfare that much of the politics is being driven by right now. So keep that in mind. Another way that our magic gets bound, our creative energy gets bound, our free will, those are all different ways to say this, gets bound is when we seek permission to receive or to do things or to create. Or we believe that purity above all else is what makes us worthy. These are traps. They're traps that our creative will gets bound in. We don't need permission from anybody to enact our will. We already have permission. It's God-given. It's inalienable. It cannot be taken from you. It's inalienable. You don't have to fight for it. It's inalienable. You have permission. Everybody has permission to enact their free will. It doesn't mean things will always go the way you think, because there's this whole other thing going on, which is belief in power and structures that are already on this planet and that have power and influence over everybody. And no one is the ultimate source or power. It's just the strongest belief always wins out, because belief is the currency. So if you truly don't believe something, it won't have power in your life. And if you truly do believe something, whether you like it or not, it will have power in your life. And that's why it's not about just saying, okay, will this be done then? You have to believe it. That's why faith matters. That's why this is all about faith. It's all about faith. So magic itself is built on faith, and strengthening your magic, your creative energy, your power, your will is all about faith. So if you're seeking permission or believing that you have to be pure in order to have permission, it's a lie. You already have permission. Another way to know that your magic has been bound is if you have a lot of self-doubt around your intuition. and your instincts, if you just don't really trust your intuition or your instincts, or you feel clouded. And there's many reasons this could happen, but this is just one of the ways to know, okay, something is bound here. A lot of self-doubt usually gets in through some sort of agreement that we made when we were younger that we're not enough. And this can be emphasized through how caretakers or parents treated us, or the messages we got through school or systems or any external power. Another way to know that your magic has been bound is if you are avoiding leadership. And leadership is a loaded word because in the lack matrix, it can be associated with hierarchy and therefore the whole bullshit system. And a lot of people who seek leadership positions are often seeking that external validation of power. So I feel like there's a better word than leadership, but I wanted to use the word leadership because it's so rich. It has so much compost in it, because we're dying to having to prove anything, having to be powerful, having to be in charge, having to be enough, having to solve, having to fix, having to save. We're graduating from that and we're stepping into ownership. I think that's the way, ownership of our will. So another way of saying we avoid leadership or our power is we avoid ownership of our creative will. That's ultimately how we lead. We have to embody the idea that we have sovereign free will. Remember, we cannot have any of the other things we want, including a heaven on earth type of reality where everyone's needs are met, if we don't first acknowledge our creative will and take ownership of it. It's radical ownership of our life. It's not saying everything's our fault, because we're co-creative. We co-regulate, we co-create. But we take authority and ownership of our part. We pull back all of this unconscious codependency that we have in lack. And we take ownership of our creative energy, of our creative urge. Another way that we can tell our magic has been bound is if we are overgiving and undercharging for our services or for our creative presence, or even just undervaluing ourselves. Because we may not directly get money, or it could just be even if you're working for somebody else. If you are working and you don't make enough money, you're undercharging. You're undervaluing yourself, and most likely overgiving. Often this can be we start undergiving as well, because we develop resentment, and then we don't give at all because we overgave for so long, but we don't feel safe to actually give either. So then we hoard, and that hoarding gets worse through resentment. So these are all ways our magic gets bound. Another way our magic gets bound is when we feel responsible for the world's pain. Of course, this is a classic empath one, that I must suffer until nobody else is suffering. Or I'm responsible somehow for how other people feel. This is a cult tactic that the lack matrix, the politics, religion, everyone cannot wait to jump right on the bandwagon and use this. Oh, you want to be responsible for how I feel? Perfect. Let me make you responsible, because I don't want to be responsible for it. So anyone who's willing to be responsible for how other people feel, guarantee you will be taken up on that. We don't even realize that we're saying I'm responsible. And so we're immediately getting people who don't want to be responsible for how they feel. And we reinforce the narcissistic idea and worldview through this. The narcissist becomes so completely disconnected from their role in anything. They see themselves as perfect, as never doing anything wrong, as always the victim to everybody else's stupid decisions. They're always the victim, and they never can see where they are wrong. And usually become obsessed with they're not wrong. They have to be right. They have to be right. They have to be right. This is why the narcissist is in charge of the lack matrix. The narcissist fuels it. The whole empath narcissist dynamic fuels it, but the narcissist controls it. There's a position of power there. And that's why most leaders are complete narcissists. Most leaders in the world of lack. Again, this is why this word leadership is so important, because that word has been tainted. So feeling responsible for other people's pain, this is why I always talk about this is one of the most important shadow contracts that we break. the shadow contract that I must suffer until no one else is suffering, or that I'm responsible for how other people feels. No. You can allow people to feel anything. And once we really embrace this idea that all beliefs are okay, all emotions are okay. All beliefs exist, number one. All emotions are okay. There's not one single emotion that's wrong. That is a mechanism of control to help to keep our power suppressed. Because emotions are fuel. And they fuel things, they move things forward. They create movement. If they get suppressed, they create stagnation and sickness and illness. So again, this is one of the most powerful mechanisms of the lack matrix, is to keep our emotions suppressed and recycled back into the war matrix, the war paradigm, the victim, aggressor, savior paradigm. So don't allow yourself to feel responsible for other people. I feel like this is where a lot of us have done incredible work. I think there's even a time where you can almost feel sociopathic to yourself. If you've been extreme on the side of being overly responsible for how other people feel and feeling so much that you can't find a sense of your own self, the antidote is enacting a bit of sociopathic energy. It's like a little bit of the poison is actually the antidote. The antidote for the empath is a little bit of the poison, which is the sociopathic tendency. I've talked about how the lack matrix is fueled by the empath narcissist dynamic. That's the fuel, but it's run by the sociopath intellectual, that like the highly sensitive person, which is the human being who has a highly sensitive central nervous system, and the sociopath. That is the dynamic that runs it. It's in charge. It's ultimately sociopathic and highly sensitive. And it's fueled through the empath narcissist dynamic. That's the story that everybody lives out. So the antidote to being extremely overly responsible for how everybody feels and not having a sense of self is to embody a little bit of the sociopath. Just enough. You just need a little bit of the poison. And I mean this literally. You just need a little bit of that to help balance it out, because it protects your mind and it creates boundaries. And when I've intentionally enacted the sociopath in me, and it has helped tremendously balance my empathic gifts. So the caveat is, of course, you don't turn your emotions off. You just know how and when to do that. And it's not even that you're turning them off. It's you shift your resonance so that you're not feeling them in your central nervous system. Because there are some things that we are not equipped to transmute. I do not believe we are meant to transmute everything. We did not receive the training that Jesus received. There's a reason why he could fully transmute people's energy, people's sickness, all of that. But we have collectively, we haven't even, I do believe there's masters on this planet, but much of the teaching around transmutation has been hidden from us, which is why we've been so enslaved. So I do believe there is a mechanism to the sociopath that is helpful and can keep us safe. It's the reason why it would even exist. We're not at war with anything, remember that. It's just that everything needs to be put in its rightful place, and that creates the balance. So even the sociopath within you, I say embrace it, because if you're feeling like you're overly responsible or you're feeling way too much, it's going to help counterbalance that. Another way, I have 3 more ways. I have so many notes here, you guys. Another way that we can tell if our magic is bound is if our creative urge feels suppressed by guilt or fear. And this is often people who've been raised in religion. It doesn't matter which one. If it's a strong belief that this is the only way, and that outside of this, all these bad things can happen if you don't believe in this, and that you're going to be punished, and this is the only way, the only truth. Any belief that enforces that. And there's secular things that do this as well. That type of manipulation that suppresses our creative urge by reinforcing guilt and shame. It's fear, guilt, and shame, really. That is the ultimate mechanism of a cult. It is the ultimate mechanism of a cult. And a cult is any external system that we believe we have to have, or else we're not safe, or we're not enough, or we will be punished. I think the world as a whole, as a collective, needs to wake up to the fact that we've been in a cult simulation. It's not just these weirdos in obscure areas. Every single one of us, especially in the modern world, if we've been tapped into the global system at all, has been infiltrated by a cult and has been used as an experiment for psychological warfare, and has been used for cult tactics, has had cult tactics used upon them psychologically. Everybody. So keep that in mind. And our creative urge most gets suppressed through this. That's why a lot of people feel like the only thing they can do with their creative energy is be angry and talk about everything that's wrong and who the bad guy is and how the bad guy needs to go down. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not things that don't need to be called out. They will inevitably be called out. They will inevitably fall as we remove our participation from it. We do not need to give all of our energy into pointing out something. We will know the moments that we're meant to point out evil because it'll be right directly in front of us, and all we have to do is go, hey, right here, evil. Don't give your permission to it anymore. We don't need to go seeking it out, though. And if there's any sort of desperation of needing to be right, or who's right, or who do I need to align with, that is all part of lack. It's draining your creative energy. You need to let it go. Any feeling that we have to earn it, that we have to be worthy, or that we're too much or too powerful or not enough, all of those things are indications that our creative urge is bound to the lack matrix. So it's important to remember that you are not defective. We are not defective. We are unwinding millennia of programming, of war programming specifically. This is not about any current system. It's not about any current person. This is an ancient program that has been fed for thousands of years through human life, through human blood. Humans are enslaved to this. They have been enslaved to this for thousands of years. And humans are getting liberated one by one by one, individual by individual. So the revelation here, the big revelation, is that our creative sovereignty is returning. And that our tech is relational. It's sovereign and it's self-regulating. That we cannot truly know communion with God until we know communion with the self, and vice versa. We cannot truly know communion with others until we know communion with God and the self. Abundance comes from sovereignty, not from the hierarchy. It doesn't come from external authorities. We're not waiting to be approved. We're already worthy. It's already innate. We already have our pentacle. Our creative will is our divine inheritance, and our will be done. How we manifest on heaven, or how we manifest heaven on earth, is depending on how free our creative will is. How much permission we are giving ourselves to use our creative technology. We can revoke any contract we've had. We can revoke permission for anything, any belief, any demon that we've given jurisdiction over. We've allowed to have jurisdiction over us. We can revoke permission for that. We can nullify any contract, any shadow contract that's been born in the belief of lack, because that's the block. We didn't know, and now we know, and you don't have to. And once you know you don't have to, you just revoke permission. It doesn't mean there's not habits that take a long time, that can take a long time to alchemicalize. But it starts with the belief that I have permission. We can authorize any timeline. We can say yes and we can say no. Yet let your yes be yes and your no be no. And the yes is in the resonance, and it's in the belief. We can choose a new reality. So when we unbind the Jinn, when we unbind this dominion curse, we reclaim our creative genius within. We understand that the solution is within. We understand that the abundance is within. We understand that the permission is within. That heaven on earth is within. That we are actually just realigning, recalculating, recalibrating our resonance so that we are in alignment with what we want. We're not doing action in the external so that we can be worthy. That's where we all have to unwind. We all have to undo that program. So, I mean, this is huge. You've probably, for those of you who've been around for a while, you've heard me talk about shadow contracts quite a bit. And as we've been in the membership working with the Queen of Pentacles, which is all about sovereignty in the body, this deeper level of revoking and releasing shadow contracts with the lack matrix in the physical vessel has been coming up for me. And it's where these principalities, this psychic dominion has literally taken control of our cells. It's taking control of neural pathways in our bodies. We automatically think certain ways. We automatically psychically look for the villain and the hero and the savior. We automatically look for the victim. We automatically see everything through that lens. That is what binds us to the lack matrix. And so as we've been in the membership, in my YouTube membership, the Empath Entrepreneur Tier, as we've been working with the Queen of Pentacles and preparing for this 14-day glow up, which is really about reorienting our entire resonance field outside of these shadow contracts, what Spirit has been telling me is that we need to release any final shadow contracts with the body and then create our ritual for the glow up. So if you're listening to this on my podcast or on my public channel, if you want to join this, you can join the Empath Entrepreneur tier of the YouTube membership. And there's so many videos because I've been doing this for years and all the content's in there. But we are currently in the Queen of Pentacles season and we're prepping for the 14-day glow up. So this stuff will be in there regardless of when you join. You can go back and go do it. You don't have to do it at the exact time I'm doing this live. But what I want you guys to know, those of you in the membership and those of you considering being in the membership, is that before I drop the 14-day glow up, we're going to do a little mini reminder, a little mini cleanup on our shadow contracts, specifically the shadow contracts with our body. And these are where the dominion curse has been. This is where we've had the curse of having an external dominion have psychic control over us that is influencing us psychically. So we're going to next week jump into shadow contracts with the body and learning how to identify where those shadow contracts are to release that empath guilt programming, guilt and shame, to dissolve any poverty vows, which is a big one for our humanity. This because we've been fearful of power. And we've been at war with power. And so it's why we haven't received our power. It's why we don't take ownership of our creative will. And we put the power outside of us because that means we can also project all of our war energy towards that external power. And that's why we have this continual thing where we put leaders up on pedestals and then we drop them. And then we put people up on pedestals and we drop them. It's always going to be that way. That's how it works. Power shifts hands. Eventually we overthrow the external power that we put before us because we realize it's enslaving us. But the problem is we keep just getting a new master instead of enacting sovereignty because we don't trust our creative will. So going all the way back to what I said at the beginning is that we're relational beings, that what the system has attacked is our relational nature and has caused us to believe that the enemy is the other. The enemy is the human when in actuality it's the program. And it's a foreign program that has taken over our psychic grid. And that the only way we overcome it is to get sovereign within. And then we release permission for those external authorities to influence us in a psychic way. So if you want to be a part of this, I would love for you to be a part of it. I think this is going to be so cool. The membership is a monthly thing, but you can join for the month, do this part of it with us, do the mini course, and then you don't have to stay. So it's sort of meant to be a revolving door, but you may want to stay because there's so much content in there. A lot of my mini courses that I've been doing for the last few years, they're all in my membership. Plus you get access to the Empath Vault, which is all of my videos that used to be public on YouTube. I've pretty much taken them all off. I think there might be a few more, but I've taken the majority of my YouTube videos off of my public channel. So you also get access to the Empath Vault. And it has all of my videos, all of my teachings. There's a bunch on shadow contracts as well. So anyway, I would absolutely love to have you join us in the membership. The shadow contract little mini course that I'll be dropping next, we'll be going deep into it next week, will only be available for a short amount of time. It's probably going to be 2 months. I'll announce it when I know when I'll be taking it off, because that is going to be its own course. And I have the URL and everything for shadow contracts for years now. I just haven't actually put it up. But it has come to my attention that many, many, many people need to understand shadow contracts right now, because the global system is enacting a third stage of psychic manipulation and psychic enslavement. And it is imperative that we understand how cult tactics work, how psychic manipulation works, so that we don't continue to give permission to it. Ultimately, that means burning our shadow contracts with the lack matrix. So this is huge. It's essential. And overall, I see it that there's a lot of us that are popping through in our gifts. You're meant to offer your gifts. You're meant to make money. You're meant to have wealth. All of that's changing. It's essential. Don't buy into the bullshit, especially the spiritual stuff, because that, I feel like, can be the most enslaving for empaths. We get stuck by trying to be right, be good, be agreeable, obey. We're being called to do the exact opposite of right now, of course, with discernment and intuition rooted in source. So I'd love to see you in the membership. I still do readings, by the way. So I do anomaly readings. If you want to do something around your shadow contract, you can contact me personally. I only do 3 a month. So I only work with 3 different people a month, but you can message me for November. I have spots open. I haven't announced anything yet. So if you want to work with me and go into this more individually and personally together in November, you can message me. And all of my information is in the description box or in the show notes or wherever you're listening to this. You'll find my contact information. All right, you guys, much love. And for those of you in the membership, I will see you next week. Let's dive even deeper into shadow contracts and, of course, our 14-day glow up. Okay, much love.